So, distinguished guests, the vision that we have up there is a proposed vision that has been developed for today's presentation, and it's one around post-secondary education in Shepparton and the Culpan Valley. And as you can see, it's there, and Ian presented to it. It's to provide a wide choice of relevant education options that have genuine pathways to meaningful employment, suit the talents of the individual, and deliver the skills and knowledge for local industry and business to compete nationally and internationally. It has not been developed lightly. I'd like to explain why, as well as a number of critical elements. Firstly, it recognises the importance of the collective Culpan Valley. Peter Ryan made that point in his presentation earlier. It's the collective Culpan Valley with all the shires combined. That is the towns, communities and the young people in partnership with the strengths and benefits of Shepparton with its economic size, resources and influence. Secondly, it captures the realities of how people move through their formal education journey and the critical transitions they experience, that is early childhood, primary school, secondary school and post-secondary education. And this is versus institutional types, such as TAFE versus university, and curriculum mode, academic versus competency-based, which in the 21st century industry workforce is critical, as the combination of academic conceptual thinking skills and technical competency are required for individual performance, and I think all of you would agree with that. Thirdly, it reflects the talent and extremely diverse backgrounds that have been spoken about today from this region and celebrates it, therefore driving engagement and motivation to complete education, and that's one of the challenges we deal with is completions, and to leverage this education experience to get a meaningful job, and I underline meaningful. Fourthly, it captures the breadth and complexities of continually evolving industries that local businesses are competing, and that's the requirement for a wide choice of educational options. And finally, it links to the critical need, and which has also been highlighted in earlier presentations, for local industry and business to access the right skills and knowledge to be able to successfully compete nationally and internationally. That creates employment demand and sustainable employment for the individual. However, this vision, and I'm challenging the vision, is a subset. All it is a subset of what I believe is a greater vision that must be created for the Culpan Valley. And that is linked to the work undertaken by the Culpan Valley Task Force and the Committee for Greater Shepparton spoken about early today. And that is a vision that is compelling, coherent and highly competitive in a globalised economy, supported by education and community service providers at all levels through an integrated, and I mean that, integrated from early childhood right through to tertiary, workforce planning process involving industry, government, council, community and philanthropists. So the time is now for change. The statistics promoted through the Lighthouse Project by Dr Katrina Alford's socio-economic profile of Shepparton, other reports, as well as a recent Department of Education on-track survey for the Greater Shepparton region, highlight the time is now for change. The on-track survey, which is 2013 destinations for 2012 Year 12 completers or equivalent completers for Greater Shepparton versus the Victorian average, provides an interesting perspective. 35.6% went to university, that's in the Greater Shepparton, versus the Victorian average of 53.2%. 8.8% engaged in vocational education training, that's Certificate 4 and above, and diplomas, for example, versus the Victorian average of 12.1%. This was, however, offset to a limited extent by 13.6% engaging in apprenticeships and traineeships versus an average of 7.1%. And I'll have to say, maybe GoTAFE's help and contribute to that. So I'll take a little bit of positive out of that. And a significant 30.8% moving directly into part-time or full-time employment versus the Victorian average of 18%. So that's really interesting. They are going to jobs, but when you do the analysis on the jobs, it is very much low-skilled and transient. So it's hospitality, farm worker skills. So they're not developing the skills that we're talking about in the future. The data also highlights that 31.9% of early school leavers in the Greater Shepparton, and this is a scary fact, and it really did shock me, are looking for work or not in the labour force or training versus the Victorian average of 23.3%. And that goes to the Alfred work around the social issues. You've got 31% of the kids who are finishing school early, and we see them coming through to TAFE, but they don't have a lot of the, I call it the skills, the numeracy skills, to actually get jobs. And that's what's scary. You've got 30% of those kids. Now, I understand, you could say, the amongst you would criticise my statement here that it includes metropolitan Melbourne, and that includes Toorak. So I think we all know that most kids living in Toorak go through to university. However, and it hasn't compared versus regional areas, but I think as a bit of a challenge, we do need to not weaken our bar, we need to look at the overall average, but it does provide an interesting picture. Now, this is a quantitative analysis. I'd like to align it with a qualitative comment. I recently had with it's a conversation I had recently had with my 13-year-old son, Noah. He's currently in Year 8 at Wanganui Park High School here in Shepparton. He asked me whether I thought Shepparton was a ghetto, because that is what the kids were saying at school, and that as soon as they finished school, they would move to Melbourne. And it's actually consistent with John Dure's presentation, which spoke about the movement of kids out of this region. My response was definitely not, and it was about the benefits of living in a regional area. Now, this story also highlights, to those of you who don't know me, I'm actually not a guy who flew in to get a job here as a CEO. I'm actually a person who Peter Ryan here employed 10 years ago. Remember that, Peter? Yeah. You employed me, it was one of your risks, I think that was what you termed it. I was a marketing guy working for a company called Sarah Lee. I came there, I'm also a member of the Culpan Valley community, who is very committed to its development, having moved to Shepparton 10 years ago, and who was CEO at the time, I've now got 3 boys here in the public school system, and I now happen to be the CEO of GoTAFE. I'll put it that way. I'm a parent, I'm a community member, but I happen to be the CEO of GoTAFE, therefore passionately involved. Now I'm going to talk about GoTAFE's commitment to the Culpan Valley. Culpan Institute of TAFE, or GoTAFE, as is known today, since its establishment in 1997, and prior, through a lot of the people who know GoTAFE early forms as a technical college, South Tech, North Tech, has made a concerted effort in the Culpan Valley to provide vocational education leadership and support for the region to be economically sustainable, as well as to provide appropriate education and training support to individuals requiring skills and employment, and enterprises and industries wanting to improve productivity and profitability. This has involved, over the last 2 years, increasing the number of courses offered by the Institute to over 400. Now, that's not all in the greater Shepparton area, but it's across the whole of our institute, with enrolments of over 9,000 in the Culpan Valley. Now, some of those is 2 courses, but it's around, our enrolments are 9,000 in this region. We're 25,000 nationally. And developing partnerships with major industries and service providers such as the dairy industry and Murray Dairy, the Victorian Farmers Federation and GV Health. Now, I went through the data analysis on the Culpan Valley here in Shepparton and with Culpan Valley with GoTAFE, which hadn't been done before within my institute specifically. Now, the top 5 Culpan Valley enrolment areas for GoTAFE in 2013 were the following: adult, community and further education, that's including multicultural and Koori education, but a lot of foundation skills work there. That's including our VCAL program. Community service and health, nursing, aged care, early childhood, high growth, probably 15 to 20% growth there. Agriculture and horticulture, tourism and hospitality, building construction. Now, we've actually had 13,047 enrolments in the community services and health area, and I know for Peter you'd be happy, we've got 945 in agriculture and horticulture. So it's very, very strong. Now, the interesting enough, and this is some data that I've picked up, is 79% of these enrolments were for under 25-year-olds, which were aligned to the needs of the economy and labour market based on DEC data for June year to date 2013. So it does challenge, Peter, your concerns from the GV Task Force. What I propose to the Committee for Greater Shepparton is this is an issue that needs to be resolved, because the data government's getting and what I'm getting is saying there is an alignment. But I do want to say GoTAFE is absolutely committed to aligning our training with the skills required in this economy, in this region. But I also would like to say, we're not just the only provider. The Victorian Government, as Jeanette and Wendy Lovell know, that's a vet system. There's private providers, and we compete head-to-head with private providers. So I just want to say, this is maybe a piece of work that could be done for the Committee of Greater Shepparton, because we're committed to actually getting that alignment right, because otherwise it's a waste of money. Now, the initiatives and provision in the Goulburn Valley that GoTAFE's involved with and it's been a lot of work in the last 2 or 3 years. We do deliver, actually, in the tertiary space, 30 diploma programs, which are effectively pathways to university, ranging from agriculture to retail management. In the last 18 months, we've established formalised pathways and credits for GoTAFE diplomas to relevant La Trobe University degrees, and that's what John was talking about. We've also involved with the co-delivery with La Trobe University over the last 2 years of a tertiary enabling course designed to target multicultural students with limited education background and high tertiary aspiration. This initiative came out of a successful Victorian Government joint submission in 2012, with the course in Shepparton the most successful across the state, with approximately 25 students engaged every year. We're also, and as Glenn mentioned, involved with the co-delivery of the Academy's, the ASH program with the University of Melbourne, and its evolution, and it's evolving as we speak, where we actually have now included VCAL, Victorian Certificate of Applied Learning, into that group, that enables pathways for students to other courses within GoTAFE. And that's one of the strategies we've got at the University of Melbourne with ASH, to make our 400 courses available for every Indigenous student. We're also involved with the co-delivery of Diploma of Agriculture and Bachelor of Agriculture with the University of Melbourne at Duke College, which has been very successful. We also have been involved with the development with of the Diploma of Integrated Studies with the University of Melbourne, and that was another joint submission in 2012 that we were successful in. We also have been working with another university called Federation University Australia here in Shepparton, and that was formerly University of Ballarat. And that was started in 2009. We actually delivered that degree, and we've had more than 50 students graduate over the last few years. But the other point I want to make is the work that GoTAFE's heavily involved with the schools. As Big Brother, we're the Big Brother amongst all the schools. I've sort of felt, I'm on a school council myself, Graham Vale Primary School Council. I'm very aware of the responsibility we have. We have partnered with all public high schools to deliver vet and school programs, as well as to obtain funding to establish a new building trades facility at Maguire College in 2015. GoTAFE will financially contribute $4.6 million out of its own reserves for this initiative. It will transform that school and get vocational pathways directly linked to those kids who are struggling, and you could say one of the most marginalised schools in this region. We're also the sponsor of the Goulburn Valley Football League, the major sponsors. You hopefully hear our name every time the results are mentioned. You know what that is? That's a means of engaging young people through football. It's innovative. We've also established hairdressing and beauty programs in 2009. We've got over 200 enrolments across the region, and that's actually a skills shortage area, and I know all students get employed. So that's part of the development of the region regards to personalised support services. And Peter Ryan was a very major part of that. We've established in 2002 the National Centre of Dairy Education Australia. That was with Dairy Australia. The initiative is now seen as the leading agriculture industry education partnership in Australia with Commonwealth Government recognition. Now that also goes to, which is an amazing fact, we had Deloitte's working with us for about 9 months last year, and they dissected GoTAFE. What we discovered, 33% of all agricultural training government funded in Victoria is either under the GoTAFE brand or the National Centre of Dairy Education brand. So GoTAFE has really taken initiative from this area. But we've also been, and I recognise Wendy Lovell, who's here today, we've been an innovator in partnerships with government, with GoTAFE partnering with Wendy Lovell, the Department of Human Services, Brotherhood of St Lawrence and Hanover Welfare Services to support the development in 2015 of a 40-bed accommodation education first youth foyer directly opposite our Friars Street campus. This going to be for at-risk 16 to 23-year-olds with TAFE education embedded into the conditions of accommodation. This is the sob story, but you've got to hear it. This has been despite, and with respect to Jeanette and Wendy, but it has been despite major funding and policy changes over the last 2 years. We're talking 25% plus. which has forced other regional TAFEs to significantly downsize their course offerings to their local communities, and some of those TAFEs aren't that far from here, in order to survive, with the most significant being the removal of base funding for maintenance and capital works, as well as moving to a student demand-driven funding model with student numbers and cost of delivery critical factors in TAFE's capacity to deliver courses and remain sustainable. But I'm saying these similar challenges have also been felt across primary, secondary and university sectors. Now, when you combine that our jobs are really challenged, when you add the social challenges identified as part of the Lighthouse project, it really does make getting effective engagement and learning really challenging. So I'm just saying it is challenging out there. But you can see, and hopefully you can see, a lot of effort and activities underway to improve post-secondary outcomes. I know definitely, and take responsibility, we need to improve. However, it is very, very challenging for providers in the current economic environment. Therefore, it is vitally important that all stakeholders work together, and I'm going to say it, don't criticise, because all that means is nothing actually really happens. If we are to improve the economic and educational situation described in the analysis that has been undertaken in the Shepparton and Culpan Valley region. Look, I just want to say there is a really good Geelong case study that was presented to the GV Task Force. If you go through it, there are a very similar situation with Ford and Holden. There's some really good initiatives. One of the things that Deakin University and the Gordon TAFE worked very well together, and Higher Education Skills Group have identified some real improvements in that area, particularly with disengaged youth, student engagement regards to dropout, student attainment, pathways, and student interest that have led to student employment and student participation. So there's a lot more detail in that case study, but I'm saying let's not try and do it all here. So in closing, as a result of my process and researching for today's presentation, and look, my background's marketing and business and large multinational companies and all that sort of stuff, and looking at strategic challenges, it's really apparent, frankly, these conversations have been held in many parts of regional Australia. It's very consistent, with similar challenges identified as a result of the globalised economy and social impact on regional communities. Therefore, to be ultimately successful, the real challenge isn't necessarily the development of a post-secondary education, which I've got here, which we have proposed today. So I'm actually saying maybe it's not that. But even though it's extremely important and as a means of focusing effort and resources, so it's a focus and effort thing. It's the ability, and I'm a member of the Shepparton or Culpan Valley community, so I know what goes on. It's the ability to get the Shepparton and Culpan Valley community, including philanthropists and education providers at all levels, strategically aligned and committed to achieve an agreed, overarching and compelling vision, with the development of truly competitive and sustainable businesses and industries a key outcome, and that goes to the GV Task Force, a key outcome of this plan. This will require a collaborative approach, as no one player has the capacity to do it all, and could be, and this is the positive, a competitive advantage nationally and internationally if managed very carefully and cleverly. Thank you.